Hello and welcome to my channel. I have here an Arnold Schwarzenegger T-800 bust from the Terminator. This is full scale and made out of fiberglass, and I picked this up on eBay. The seller's details are on the bottom of the screen right now. This to me looks like it's been sculpted and then cast. That way you can make several copies. This is a fairly good likeness of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it looks like it's based from the second film, T2. And it wasn't too expensive either. As you can see, some of this excess fiberglass needs removing, so I score it around the edges and start chipping away. The larger pieces I can just pull off with my fingers. For the smaller pieces I can use some clippers. I have two choices of how to display this guy, either as a bust or build it up on a mannequin and have it full size, as the seller also makes the damaged chest and leg pieces. Once all the excess bits have been removed, it just needs filing smooth, and after this I also give it a once over with some sandpaper. Arnie has a bit of a pimple up his nose and this needs cutting out. This was probably caused by an air bubble. I'm also cutting out his eye so I can put a fake one behind it. This took forever to score, so I had to break out the Dremel. I had to be so careful with this, otherwise I could destroy the whole thing. I also used the Dremel to remove the remainder of the pimple up his nose, and I also gave him some ear holes, and this helped to make the ear look a little bit more three-dimensional. I used a small file and a sanding stick to help widen the eye, and this has to be done slowly and carefully. As for the ears, I scooped out the ear canal. I had to wet my finger and push it into place, and bear in mind, nobody gives Schwarzenegger a wet willy. And those are looking a little bit more three-dimensional now. There's a couple extra pieces to add to the T-800. One is a mechanism for the jaw, and the other is the mechanical eye. And as with the other items, these also need a little bit of prep work, which mostly includes sanding and filing. Off camera, I use my Dremel to drill a hole behind the mechanical eye, and this is so I can fit a tea light behind it. But to complete the next stage, I'm going to have to make the eye transparent, so I'm basically going to have to duplicate it and recast it. So in order to do that, I'll create a little tray out of tin foil. Then I can stick the eye to the bottom of it with some heavy duty tape, and this is to stop it from floating upwards. The silicone I'm using for the mould is in two parts. I pour equal parts into a mixing cup and give it a good stir, and it's just a matter of pouring it slowly and carefully over the item, as we want to reduce the risk of trapping air and creating bubbles. After a few hours it's set and can be removed, and it doesn't matter about destroying the tin foil at this point. And with a little bit of luck, the eye should just pop out, leaving a perfect negative impression, ready to make duplicates. So I've already poured in the clear resin, I'm now popping it out. That came straight out and without any imperfections. So I just need to use the Dremel to drill a hole in the back, and this is for my light source. Since it's all clear, the light just bleeds out everywhere, so I need to paint it. I'm using black for the base colour, and it's also the best colour for light blocking. For the silver, I use rub and buff. I just add a little drop to my finger, then rub it all over. This will also leave the blacks in the shallow areas untouched, and that way we get to see all the panel lining. Since this is a wax based paint, it takes a little while to dry. Next I paint the lens of the eye in red. The paint didn't want to go unevenly, so I had to do the best I could. I'm missing the lens cover, but they're easy enough to create, and I do that by adding on a few drops of UV resin, and this cures almost instantly under a UV torch, and the shine that we get from this is a really nice piece of detail. As you can see, it's an additional layer of detail which adds to the believability. I'll save the light test till the end of the video. I've covered on it with an undercoat followed by a flesh tone, and by using a variety of makeup sponges and brushes, I'm going to add in quite a few colour variations, because flesh isn't simply one colour. I'm mostly concentrating on highlights and shadows, and anywhere where I've applied too much paint, I can always lift off a little bit with some tissue, and I keep adding layers until the flesh tone looks fairly realistic. I then sponged on a bit of brown to create some freckles, and this effect worked very well. Normally I recommend using an airbrush for this, but since I don't have one, I'm going old fashioned. For the veins on the side of his head, I'm using a blue wash. Once this dries it will be more subtle. and the same applies to the lips as I had a red wash. As the last thing you want is for it to be bright like lipstick. This next step was quite nerve-wracking, as I sponged on some black to try and make it look like it had some stubble. I had to go over it with a flesh colour afterwards to help tone it down a bit. Now for every area which is going to be chrome needs a black undercoat, and as you can already see, this is making a big difference. For the metallic, I'm using rub and buff silver, and where possible I will brush it on, although where the area is big enough I can switch to a sponge and sponge it on, as this will effectively give it a polish and remove all brush marks. This is quite time consuming, as I need to make sure I don't cross-contaminate the flesh area, as that's much harder to repair than something with a single tone. By brushing over the top, all the recessed areas remain black so that we can still see the detail. The piston mechanism for the mouth can be glued into place, and now using a brush and a salmon colour, I paint on all the damaged areas. I will go over a lot of these areas again with some red paint, which will represent the blood, and the idea is to build up the layers. Just by having these areas of interest painted, it really does bring out all the detail and all the damage. Plus it also separates what is damaged flesh and what is the metal endoskeleton, as the blood will eventually spread onto both areas. The torn up right ear is the last part to do, and now's a good time to move on to the eyes. Arnold apparently has blue-grey eyes, so I'll find the nearest one to match. I've also wrapped it in milliput, which will be pushed into place, so once it's set, it's not going to move. I've also attached the right eye in a similar fashion, and the milliput I've used to blend it in will be painted black and silver. And now it's time to start adding the blood. I've already applied the fatty muscle colour, now it's a matter of putting the blood on top of that. This doesn't need to be too accurate due to the nature of how it was damaged, with a variety of firearms and blunt instruments, so blood splatter will be all over the place. I need to get into all the deep recesses and make sure every inch of flesh is covered. I'm also going to add another layer on top of this. I'm going to mix the red with a little bit of black and some satin. This will not only darken the blood, but will also give it a little bit of a shine, because as you probably already know, fresh blood reflects light. And I'm not going over the exact same place as before, as the idea is some of the blood is fresher in different areas, depending how old the wound is. And this is how Arnie looks with all the blood applied to him. Personally, I would like to leave it at this stage, because I know what has to happen next, and I'm not looking forward to it. This guy needs some hair, and you can't exactly buy a wig off the shelf for him. So I found this brown fur, which is about an inch long, and this should be passable for hair. Plus the back is also a little bit stretchy, which will help me get around all the contours. So I've already cut out his left eyebrow, and I'm gluing it on with some Mod Podge. And once it's dry, I can use some hairdressing scissors to give it a trim. And that was the easy part done, and now for the rest of the head. This is going to be done in stages, and each stage will overlap the last one. Now the easiest way to find the shape and size of something this big is by using shrink wrap. It's just a matter of wrapping it around the area you want, and then draw on the template which needs cutting out. If you've ever laid roof tiles, you have to put the bottom ones on first, and then work your way up. And I'm doing the same with this hair, because gravity will cover up the seams. So it's just a matter of transferring the pattern onto the substitute hair, and once that's been cut out, I cover it in Mod Podge and stick it into place. And while the glue's still wet, now is the chance to make little alterations. And I'll leave this overnight to set before moving on to the next piece. With each piece I try and bear in mind that I need some extra fur for overlapping, and that should help me hide the seams. It's always better to add on a little too much, as it can always be removed. Take for example the back of the head, and all I need to do is trim it until it looks right. I have some watered down PVA glue, and I'm going to apply this to the hair. This will not only help combing it easier, but it will also make the hair a little bit rigid, and less likely to move out of place. And as you can see, when it's done right, those seam lines start to disappear. And for the areas which don't have enough fur to cover over, I just add on a few patches. And now for the difficult part, the top of the head. This fur will start to pull out if I'm not too careful, so I'll make several gentle passes, adding on a little bit more spray each time, and that way I can slowly pull everything up without causing any serious damage. Then eventually we get to the finished product, and I present to you Arnie as the damaged T-800. Bear with me as I couldn't fit him on my usual turnstile because this guy is full size and takes up a considerable amount of space. It would have been nice to have tinkered with him a little bit further and get it a little bit more accurate, but in my experience too much tinkering leads to its undoing, so I decided that this was a good place to leave it at. I am seriously impressed though of the original sculptor, as this is a very good likeness of Arnold Schwarzenegger. This seller does supply additional cybernetic parts, so in the future if I ever decide to turn him into a full mannequin, I have that opportunity. But for now, having his severed head on the shelf has enough impact for my visitors. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, if I can do it, so can you.